Hey guys, this is Eric Weingartner with Weingartner Racing. Man, this is going to be a good video. This is my new favorite LS3 head, period. So far of all the ones I've tested, and there's the one I'm most favorite with. I know you can watch one of my other videos and you can see my favorite LS3 head. Nah, this one's now it. So let me tell you what I've got here. Promaxx sent me the 3 heads just to see what they would even flow. And I said, yeah, I'll do a video with them. So I got to say that. They sent them to me just to do some testing. So this particular set, the LS3, is actually going on the dyno. But we'll talk about that in a minute. But all these are from Promaxx. They didn't pay me to say any of this. I flowed it completely independent. So whatever it flows, it flows. They didn't tell me to make it look good or bad. They don't even know I've made this video yet. So, but man, this dude is bad. But let's talk about what we got here. So the first one is an LS3 head. This is for your 6-liter. It's one from Promaxx. As you can tell, it's not CNC ported. It's as cast. Pretty nice. This one behind it's also a bad dude. This one is an LS3 style head, but for a small bore. So this one obviously will fit on a 6-liter, the LS3 obviously. This one's actually made for the smaller bore stuff, so it can go on to 5.3, even a 5.7 stuff. So can't go on the 4.8, I don't think. But there's that one, and it's bad. I'm gonna show you flow numbers on all 3 of these heads. That's a bad dude. And then they got this one. That's their Cathedral LS1, LS2 head, and it's the 245cc version. They actually have one that's bigger than this. But that one's only made for big bore. These 2 right here, so that head, that Cathedral, and this one can run on a small bore. This one can only run on a big bore. I float them all in the same bore size, 4030. That just happens to be the smallest bore size I have for an LS. I've got a 4155 that's much larger, but again, I float them all on a 4030. So all 3 were floated on a 4030, and you're gonna get to see those results. But I'm gonna start with this one because my phone's about to die and I'm gonna have to do some other recording. But this one is their LS3, and it comes, and I know you're looking at it, you're like, that looks just like the Liberty head. It's a Liberty head. No, I thought that too when I saw the pictures online. It was just a Liberty head, and they have their own little version of a Liberty one. Because as you know, my favorite head used to be the Liberty one. This is not a Liberty head. So take a close look at the chamber. Now, this is one of the ones I'm porting for a customer, but this actually is an LS3 one from that's Liberty. But notice a couple things. Look over here in this area. Now look at theirs. It's not the same casting. So you're like, well, the chamber looks the same. Well, it looks similar. Now, granted, these have been modified, but it's not. Again, that one's been ported, so it's hard to say. But I'm telling you, that chamber is just slightly different. The vane is the biggest thing. The Liberty ones actually comes farther over this way. This one's a little bit straighter. So instead, ideally, I like it to be like that one, but it's more angled this way. As far as flow numbers, so like whenever you do the Liberty LS3, I do about 330, 340. This, wait till you see, it's much, much better. The port design is different. It's just different. And I'll show you here in a second, but the rest got stuff in it. But 165 intake valve, 600 exhaust valve. This, the small bore one, which looks the same, so it's the same deal here, same raised part, so pretty much an LS3 head, but valve spacings move so they can work with a smaller bore. That's a 208 intake valve and a 600 exhaust valve. It's the same as this one. Now this is a Cathedral LS1, LS2. This one's a 208, 600. So these 2 are the same valve size. This one's bigger. It has to be run on the bigger bore because of that. So pretty much, you might say, well, isn't this port the same that's in that one? No, 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 no. That's a different port. Obviously, looking at the vane, you can tell that it's a different port. This is 260 cc's, and this one is smaller, which I am ecstatic about this one. This one is 240 cc's. And I've said before, the LS3 for the most part is too big. So you look at a stock one, it's actually bigger cc-wise than this. So the whole cross-sectional area and everything's bigger than these. And I've always said, man, the LS3s are just too big. I know they move a lot of air, but if you look at from what the demand, the size the engine actually needs, they always seem like they're overly large. And then you've got this one, 240 cc's. This thing's nice and compact. I know you're thinking, well, this is my favorite LS3 head. Yes, but if I actually had a 6-liter and I wasn't turning it past 7,000 RPM, like I just want to make peak power to 7,000, it'd be that one in a minute. So, but anyway, a little bit more about this head. It's offered in 2 configurations as far as chamber size, a 63 and a 59 cc's. These are actually the 63 cc version. This one, I think, and I'm almost positive, both of these are the smaller ones, which are at chamber size, which is 59. So these are offered at 59 or 63 as well. So what's that mean? Well, you look at this at 63 and you look at that one at 59, you just got a bump in compression. And by the way, a good one too. So especially on turbo, and you got a little bit of turbo lag, chamber compression ratio up, oh buddy. Not to mention if you wanted to soften the chamber, go get them, which I offer that service. But if you want to have the chamber softened, it'd be better with this one because the time it's softened, the chamber's pretty close to the same size as this one. Now this one is also offered in a smaller chamber too, but I think all they do is mill it off to get there. But anyway, let me move around the head and show you some more stuff with it, and we'll get to it. Okay, one of the first things off about it is the valve job. This valve job here is superior to the Liberty one. First off, the Liberty one is only like a 3-angle and it's got some weird cuts. The valve job itself's not that good. This one is so much better. So it's a 5-angle, but they blended in the other 2. So you're like, nah, it's a 3-angle. Nah, they blended in these back ones because it comes blended this way from the factory, well, from Promaxx anyway. And anyway, it's a nice transition in the chamber. There's no ledge at all. I mean, it's just beautiful. That's how it should be. Now, here's the other thing. This seat material is different from the one that's on the Liberty. I made a video and I didn't do well enough on it. I was so mad. The Liberty head I had sold to a customer, and all I had done was just blended their valve job and set it up for a solid roller using their valves. And what had happened was he ran it 3 passes and it started chipping the seats. And that was with the Liberty, not with this one. So I was upset. I called Liberty, and Liberty's like, well, you modified it just because I'd blended it. I mean, there's literally a cartridge roll, that was all. Like, you modified it, it's your baby. Even though it had nothing to do with the seats literally chipping out. So this one from Promaxx, they use a different seat material, and this to me is far tougher. And I know it is because it's the same one they use on the Project X heads for the small block Chevy, which I have beat the crap out of with on the solid roller stuff. So I'm not afraid of these seats at all. And it's a good valve job, so win-win. Let me change the view so you can see down the ports. Here's the view down the intake port. That's a nice looking port. That design is slightly different than the Liberty. The short side itself's got more of a dip in the center, which, let me move the light back so you can kind of get a better idea. That didn't quite work, but it's slightly different. And due to that, it moves more air for sure. But that's pretty neat. It does have big spring pockets, which is great because if you notice the spring on here, that's a big one for you LS guys. You're like, what is that? That's huge. Yeah, this is a solid roller spring. It's made for 800 valve lift, which this one will have about 768 when it goes on the dyno. Because yes, this one's being dyno with the high ram and 2 carburetors. You're like, 2 carbs on an LS? That's not fuel injection. Yeah, it's still gonna make some power. Anyway, that's this, but don't be afraid. I know a lot of you run hydraulic roller. You might be saying, well, how are they doing this with the solid rollers? There's no way stock rockers will take it. That's right. Jessel and Terry Wilkes and T&D, I think, as well, makes a, well, maybe not T&D, but definitely Jessel, Terry Wilkes make a shaft rocker setup that's for this. And this guy will be running the Terry Wilkes one, and it's to handle the spring pressure and stuff, and he's going to turn some RPMs with it. So those shaft rockers will work with that solid roller pressure. You can't use your stock rockers. They just won't take it. But don't be too afraid. If you're running stock rockers and you're running a hydraulic roller spring option, which probably majority of you probably are, the heads actually come with this. This is your stand that you need. So when you use this stand, you can use your stock rockers and bolt right on, and you'd be good to go with your hydraulic roller setup. But if you ever choose to become a big boy and put on some solid roller springs, that's options also available. The exhaust ports, they're big, they're round, and it looks like they should. They all look about the same. They all look like that. Big round ones. And that's the one thing. It didn't move as much exhaust flow as I thought it would, It's not bad, but I thought it would move more. And it could be just needing a little blend on the valve job on the exhaust side, but not bad, just would have thought a little bit better. One other note on these, all three of these heads, this LS3 head, that small bore, these are all 11 degrees, which is a different valve angle, which is a different valve angle than stock. So stock's like 15, LS7s are 12. These are 11. So they are rolled more over. So it's a little bit thing. So different from the normal one. This one also has the valves moved over, just like the Liberty one. It's moved over from a stock location, hence the need for the different stand. Okay, anyway, there's that. Let me go on to the next head now. Well, almost. I forgot one other thing. With these LS3 heads, if you remember I was talking about the Liberty head, the one disadvantage was the valves. The only person that made the valves were Liberty. Wow, I was so wrong. It turns out these are Promaxx heads and their valves are the same length, and these are the Promaxx valves. They have a back cut. Granted, you probably could put them up in the valve refacer and give it a little bit more back cut, and how about the low left flow even more? But they move so much air, it's hard to argue with it. But these come from Rev. They're a much better valve themselves. So better valve anyway, has a back cut, and these things help it move more air. So definitely a win there, and it's easier to get. Promaxx has them in stock. So probably put a little bit more back cut on it, but wait till you see the flow numbers. You're like, man, that moves a lot of low lift flow anyway. So anyway, that's it. Now let's get to the next one. Here's the small bore LS3 head. Now you might say, well, this is just the same head as the LS3 one you just showed. It's just smaller chamber. No, this port design is completely different. First off, because it's made for small bore, the valve sizes have to be smaller, because if you try to put a bigger valve like the LS3 one, the regular LS3 head, the large bore, and if you try to put that valve into a small bore, it would actually hit the side of the cylinder and it actually wouldn't open. So the valve size is a 208 and a 1/600. They're still the 8mm stuff. They're these. They've got a nice back cut if the camera would focus, which probably won't, but I'm gonna give it a shot here. I can't focus because it's the exhaust valve. Maybe that's why. Here's why. There you go. There's your intake valve. Nice back cut. So anyway, it's 208, 1/600, but the port design itself is different. So first off, you could tell by looking at the vane. See how the vane goes straight this way? And the LS3 large bore one has the vane facing this way. This was my preferred one. I prefer it that way. You get a better view here with the light. The port volume itself is smaller, which I absolutely love, because I've said before, the LS3 ports are just too big. This is much better for 90% of you, because a lot of the people that, I mean, let's face it, a lot of you LS guys, you're putting them in a street Camaro or something like that, or something mild, but you're only turning 6,500, maybe 7,000 RPM. And that large bore LS3 flows a lot of air, but the port volume's huge. So you're not really taking advantage of the size of the head. So for the majority of people, you need a smaller cross-sectional area, smaller CC head, and this is it. So if you look at this, even though it's an LS3 and it's got the raised up, this port volume is 240 cc. So everything about this thing is smaller. Now it's also smaller because it's got the smaller valve, and everything kind of goes with it, but that port is smaller and great for velocity and stuff, and it still moves enough air to make a bunch more power. I would absolutely love to have an LS dyno mule, because one of the things I would test is all three of these heads on a dyno, on a like a 408 that's pretty spicy, because I think it won't be till the very end. So if I ran the engine to 7,000 RPM, had it set up that way, the large bore LS3 heads, I don't think is going to make any more power until the very upper RPM over this one. So if you, my new favorite LS3 head is this one. It's got two chamber sizes. You can get a 59 or a 63 cc. If you're doing boost, which let's face it, most LS guys have now gone this way, and a lot of the guys have been running that smaller 706 head because it's got a smaller chamber for better compression. This one's a 59 cc chamber. That's amazing. So one, you got more compression, helps the turbo spool faster, and it moves more air, smaller cross-section on the head. This thing is amazing. And on the exhaust side, you still got your nice big exhaust port. I mean, it's the way it should be. This is it. This is the head. So I know you're like, when you see the flow numbers here in a second, you're going to be like, well, it doesn't move as much air as the large bore. You're right, but it's pretty close. So anyway, let's get to the last head, which is the cathedral one, and then I'll show you the flow numbers. Here's the cathedral, and I'll show you the cathedral part of this head in a second. This is the cathedral Promaxx LS1, LS2 head. It's similar to the one I just showed you, the small bore LS3 head, but not quite. So for one, this is also made for a smaller bore. They've actually got a neck size bigger. So this is the 245cc version, but they've got a 255cc version that's actually made for large bore if you're wanting to run cathedrals. This one's the 245cc is made for large bore, small bore, although it can go on the large bore too. The chamber design, if you look at it, it's a little bit different than the small bore LS3. It's quite a bit different. As far as valve sizes, though, it's the same. So you have a 208 and you have a 1600. So exact same valve size. This is 245 cc's versus that this one, the small bore LS3, is 240. So it seems like 5 cc's more. But don't forget that 240 cc's, this LS3 head's actually a longer runner. So that's why you can't use cc's. You should probably use cross sections, which no one advertises, because 240 cc seems like it's not that far off from this one, but if you look at the port length, that length's longer, which means the whole inside of the head is smaller than the inside of this one. But anyway, this is a very nice head. It looks great. It's got the vane that goes that way instead of straight, which is common. And let's show you the cathedral part of it. It's large. It's a big dude. I move my lights so you kind of see down the short side here, hopefully. Trying to do this in one take because it's a little bit late about me getting stuff out. And yeah, see the short side. It's a pretty nice looking head, very, very good. It's amazing looking itself. And then the exhaust port is the exact same almost as these. So it's round like this. This is the cathedral one. There we go. Boom. So it's actually a little bit smaller than that, than the LS3 small bore, but pretty close. Now all the heads I've so far mentioned, I didn't or haven't mentioned, they come with your rocker stand piece that you need itself comes with it. So you can use your stock rockers, and they've all got big spring pads too. So if you wanted to use tall rollers, you can. So there's your LS3 or LS1, LS2 cathedral port. Now for the part you're most interested in, these all three heads are amazing. I'm gonna say it, and I'm not because Promaxx said it. I mean, if you look at the design, you look at everything else. When I show you flow numbers, you're gonna be like, wow, all three are really good. So let's see how they compare. Here are the flow numbers. So I floated it all on the same bore, same bench. My Signs Digital 680 bench, 4030 bore, no exhaust pipe, clay radius entry, all three of them. So here we go. This is the large bore LS3, this is your small bore LS3, and this is the cathedral, and I'll go through them each time. So the numbers I care most about, and I've said this several times, is 4, 6, and peak. The reason for that is they seem to be the best indication of head's performance. So we're going to start off with the big bore LS3. At 400, it's 286. That is an outstanding number, and this is an as-cast head. So right now I've been working on the CNC program and I've got it to slightly beat this only by a couple CFM. To get that from an as-cast head, that is phenomenal. That's a really, really good number there at 4. What about the small bore? Well, smaller bore, smaller valve, 264. I should point out that's what the large Liberty LS3 head does, about that, a little bit less at 400 valve lifts. And this one does the same at that. It's a really good number there, especially for as small it is. The cathedral, it does 260 even. So they're relatively close to the same flow, a little bit more from this LS3 small bore. Now let's go to 500 and 324 from the big bore. Look at this, 313 from the small bore, so it's about 9 CFM down, or 10, 11 really. And then the cathedral is 312. So it's actually, really close to the small bore right now as far as flow numbers. Now for the 600, which is my next critical point, the large bore LS3 does 353. 353, that's a good number. Great number. I mean, outstanding. Just to give you an idea, the stock LS3 on my bench goes like 320 something, so you're 30 CFM up. The small bore at 600 does 337. And then look at this. Look at the cathedral, 334. They're only 3 CFM difference. So it's really, really close. And that's still, I mean, you're like, wow, that's still almost 20 CFM down. That small bore is not that great. It's much smaller. Man, I'm telling you. And remember, the flow numbers are one thing. but the engine has to need that much air. So you might say 353 CFM, but if you don't need that to make the power, this one's actually going to be running better. And now for peak. At the best point, the large bore LS3 does it at 900 valve lift. And remember, don't say, I know several of you right now are clicking, no one runs it to 900 valve lift. They can. So it is possible. But really, the reason why I flew them there is to see how stable the port is. As you can tell, it drops back. So it goes 353 to 343 and then starts coming up. So I'm looking at stability more than the actual flow number. Still, 363, that's the best it does. Now look at this one. It does 353 the small bore does 353 at 700. Outstanding. And it doesn't drop off. See, like right after 7, on the large bore it drops off, and the same thing happens on the small bore, and then it starts recovering. But still, 353 at 700 lift. Oh my goodness, that's an amazing deal. And then how's it compared to this? Look at this. Shocker here, 358. So it actually, from the cathedral. The cathedral is actually outflowing the small bore LS3 at peak, but then it drops off more than the LS3 small bore one does. And that's why I like this better. Plus, if you look at this design, the air still has to come over this hump, and it's more of a straighter shot with the LS3 versus the cathedral design. So it's like, wow, but still relatively close. Exhaust side, I told you, I think this just this is the large bore LS3. I think it just needed a better blend on the valve job on the exhaust side because it only did 238. And if you look at this one right here, the small bore, it beat it by a bunch at 251. Not so much, I know you're like, well, that's the port design. It has to be the port design. Maybe a little, but mostly it's the valve job. It just needs redone. If you redo this one, it's probably going to match this. But look at this. The cathedral one's even better at 262 at peak. It's better. It's the best exhaust flow. Now, it is a different port design. It is much smaller than actually, not much, but it is smaller than the LS3's exhaust port, and even smaller than that one. But again, I think it's just the valve job just needs better blending. So all three as cast heads, and all three are amazing. So Promaxx actually has some really good LS heads. So I am a dealer. I'll be happy to sell them any of these. And I know it might sound like I'm a sales pitch. I'll sell you anything. I'm a dealer for just about every set of heads besides ProComp Speedmaster. I don't sell those. But I'll sell you anything. But this is my new favorite LS3 head, this small bore LS3, because I think this one's the cat's meow for most of what you guys are doing. And you cannot argue the price. There are cheaper ones. No doubt there are cheaper LS3 heads. But for the performance, for this cost, outstanding. There's better flowing ones too, and better performing ones probably as well. But for the cost and what it is, it's amazing. And I can't wait to eventually work on one of these. Any one of these three are gonna be amazing. So thanks for watching. Guys, I'm No Superman. You guys take care.